going to share it, and oh, great. We're going to work off that. But right, one of the interesting things about the Siman is Seif Aleph is about Da'at or Ratzon. Not so clear. Those are probably the same thing. Maybe they are, but right, of the parties involved. And Seifim Bet through Hay, which we're doing Bet today, and Gimel through Hay next week, are about Edim, Edut, right? And I was just trying the tour's organizational structure here. Why did he choose to combine those two? So I wanted to open it to everybody here, just to have, if anyone had any thoughts about that, or if this had occurred to them. I have my own thoughts, but they're not good thoughts.
Can you restate the question?
Yeah, of course, right. Why did the tour organize Siman Membet such that he combined, right, the necessity of Da'at in Kiddushin with the rules of Edut in Kiddushin? Why those two things? They feel like, to me, like they could have been two separate Simanim, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe everyone else, it's obvious. It's Pshita, and you can tell me. So
repeat your question.
I'll say, what was the tour's, potentially the tour's thought process of combining the necessity of Da'at in Kiddushin and the rules of Edut in the same Siman?
It's interesting because generally regarding Mechira, right? And you are one someone, you force someone in terms of Mechira, Mechira is Kayim. The Mechira is Kayim. But in Kiddushin, it's different.
Yeah, we're going to see that sugya in Bava Batra today.
And I think here's well, yeah. So it could very well be and the motion of Israel, and those are two very important parts of what they thought Kiddushin might be. Anyway, that's my top of the head.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's anybody else lost the recording?
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button.
So
maybe redefining the conditions of Edut as it relates to Kiddushin. I mean, it's not the same Edut as everywhere else. Like, you need to actually witness a Ratzon as opposed to just witnessing the action.
Great, that's what Josh said, and we'll see that in some of the sources, that maybe, it's not just that you saw the action, but that you knew that the two of them, that's what they were doing. They were actually doing, and we'll get into the whole problem of like, can you even know what somebody's Ratzon is, and what's the chazaka on that, and so forth. So good. That's another really good connection.
Except that by Kesef Kiddushin, you need to know that it's a pruta. The Edut is also about that. You're not, the Edut is not just about that.
Good. Yeah, no, I thought about that too, and so maybe that is maybe that knocks down that reasoning. Although Alana, you wrote, to us a woman's choice seems like a moral issue, but I think the tour, they were good about technicalities. So maybe I'll go off that a little bit. I was wondering if up until now, right, we've really only been dealing with the man's role, right? And even though, right, the man's da'at will also come into play, it's kind of a secondary thing in the Siman. And this is really about, there's actually 4 parties necessary for Kiddushin. We've only talked about one party up until now, and now we're talking about the other 3 people, right? The 2 Adim and the woman, right? And maybe that's why he combined them together. I don't know. But Alana, is that similar to what you were trying to say, or it's yeah, good. Okay, is anybody else before we move on to the actual sources? So, Yavni, the particular tshuva, which seems to be about her Ratzon, then he tells about, by an issue of Edut, right? And so again, that's a case of where, well, maybe I'll put it this way: the necessity of Edut and the necessity of her Ratzon are the two major things that could stop what looks like a good Kiddushin from happening, actually working, right? It might look technically good from the outside, but if there's some way to prove that she didn't have the Ratzon, or that the Adim didn't see it, or didn't both see it, and so forth, then that's a way of saying the Kiddushin never happened.
What about, are you going to discuss the Ratzon of the Baal?
We will. Yes, we were going to discuss that too. which is so good. With that, let's dive in. I think, can I share my screen? Let's see. Do people see my screen now? All right, great. So let's start. We're going to start with some of the sources in Chazal.
Sorry, can you make the sources full screen?
Yes, I can. There we go. How's that?
You can also
Perfect, thank you.
make it 150% or something like that.
I
200.
can. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Good. I got to move. Oh, that didn't work. Hold on. Sorry. Must have hit something. There we go. Let's try that again. Okay, and let's go to 100. We'll go to 125. Just
Perfect.
all right. Good. So let's start out. I'll just go in order of how I have you, and people can pass if they want. So Ruben, start us out. We're going to start. You see here, I said I broke the source sheet down between Siman. It should be CE Aleph. My apologies. Should say we're going to fix that right now. There we go. Sif Aleph and Sif Bet. So start with the Bavli Kiddushin. This is the very beginning of Kiddushin, Daf Bet Amud Bet. And there's the whole discussion about whether or why does it say HaEzer niknet, right? There's all sorts of questions about language going on there. So Ruben, if you could read for us, Ve'i Bait Ema.
Ve'i Bait Ema Itan Yakone Ahachi Afilu Bal Kocha Tana Isha Niknet Timidata In Shelo Midata.
Great.
So
I think it's good.
just
Hava Mina Afilu Bal Korcha. Yeah.
So basically stating that as it relates to Kiddushin, we need to have her da'at. So it can't just be like Baal Kocha, you can't just force her to accept the Kiddushin.
Great. So that we don't have, what we don't have here so far is any proof of that. It's just what the Mishnah says, right? Where does the Mishnah get it from? But also read the Tosfot, because there's actually some problems with this. So read the Tosfot for us.
All right, Tosfot, Itan Yakune Ava Mina Baal Kocha. Ve'afal Gam Tana Ish Mekadesh, Temashma Baal Kocha. Anjnu Mishum de Kufava Shmoina Lacha, de Baal Kocha lo. Ve'ade Katane, de Baal Kocha lo. Ve'ade Katane Ayibara Niknet, Ve'lo Katane Ayibam Baal Kocha. Baal Kocha, de Katane Isha Niknet, Tanena Misefa Ayibama Niknet. De Niknet Mashma Midata, Mashma Baal Kocha.
Great. So explain.
So even though it says earlier that Aish Mekadesh, which could be understood as Baal Kocha, that she doesn't necessarily have a choice. Once again, so I didn't make a note of it. So basically in the second chapter, it says that the man acquires, right? For there it might be understood that the man is allowed to acquire without her consent, right? So basically it says, I knew Mishum Dikva Shmoina Lacha, the Baal Kocha lo. The only, like, it's not really a question. We already said that Baal Kocha doesn't work.
In other words,
right.
Since we already have the Mishnah that says HaEzer niknet, that proves that Baal Kocha lo, right? Then we can say HaIsh Mekadesh later, and that's not a problem. We already know the standard that it can't be against her will. Okay. But here's we've got the problem with Yevama, right? Because in that first Mishnah, again, we say Yevama niknet, and we know about a Yevama that it can be Baal Kocha. So what's the answer?
So in the case of Yevama, if we had used the language Hayabam Kone, we might have thought that it would be able to acquire without her will, since the passage which talked about Yevama using the language Niknet, which can be understood either or against will. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes. Okay.
Yeah. So, right.
Okay.
So, go for it. No, go for it.
No, go for it. Sorry.
No, so right, since we're already in the Mishnah using the language of Niknet, we also taught that about the Yevama, right? And so therefore we say Yevama Niknet, right? And that Niknet, even though it can sometimes mean midata with her will, here it also can mean Baal Korcha, right? In the case of the Yevama. So, what's the takeaway from this Tosfot in terms of the Gemara's proof so far?
What do you mean?
I mean, well, let's put it this way. When you read that Tosfot, how do you feel about that? The Gemara's claim that niknet means midata.
Wait, niknet means midata? Oh.
Yeah. Josh, what I see a reaction there. So.
No, the Gemara claims that it means midata.
Yeah.
Usually,
And I think
if you said, I don't know, sadeh niknet, you wouldn't think that you need the dat of the sadeh.
exactly. I think it's kind of a, I wouldn't say it's a bad claim. I think the Tosfot are bringing up that there's some weakness to that claim here, right? We're going to see other places, but if this is the only sugya I had to rely on about why why an isha can't be married bal korcha, I don't know. I'd feel a little bit rocky at this point. That's my take on it. But any other thoughts before we move to Bava Batra, which is going to be a much more robust?
I mean, it's just worth saying, what's the logic of it all at all? Why is the passive voice and then putting the isha there creating a concept of her volition at all? I think the answer is just that even though it's a passive voice, we're putting her up front. The woman is, and by putting her up front, it must be to tell us kvod bat malka panima. A girl shouldn't be put up front. Why is she mentioned so much? Must be her. She's got an active role to play here. She's actively agreeing to this.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think that's. But the problem is that there's so many other places where it doesn't seem to play out the same way in the language, right? Ha'ish mekadesh.
Yeah, I agree with you. He has to, each one he has to say, well, that's an exception and that's an exception. With all the exceptions, we have still a rule.
Exactly, which also might be right. I actually think this is this is maybe my own thinking, and maybe Rav Landis and Rav Nachum can comment on it. But I think there's a lot of places where the Gemara has a very old tradition, going back maybe Har Sinai, maybe to somewhere earlier in Chazal, and they and so they can stick that tradition onto different asmachta, shall we say? But I don't think this is the proof that a woman can't be mikudeshet.
Well, it's not even, it's an asmachta to a Mishnah, you say.
Yeah, exactly.
Once we're in the world of Torah, you're right, exactly. We're in the world of Torah Shabbat Peh. We have traditions. We know that that's what this Mishnah means. Agreed.
Yeah. So, okay. So with that, we're not going to do this whole sugya in Bava Batra. We're just going to do the bolded part. I just gave you the rest of it as a background. But generally, what's going on here is there's a statement of Rav Huna that talks about if you take a person and you hang them up, right? You hang them by a noose and you say, sell me a field, or I won't say sell me your field. We'll keep it as anonymous as possible at the moment. And they do it, that works. And I can just read the first line. Amar Rav Huna tlayuhu v'zabin, zvine zvini. There we go. I'll get the pronunciation right. That if I hang somebody up and force them to sell something, the sale counts if they sell it, right? My tama, the Gemara says, I'll put my cursor there where I am. What's the reason? Kol de mizabin inish, ilav de anis, lo havim mizabin, right? And actually, in every case of a sale, there's some compulsion against the person's will, right? You're forced to give something up that you didn't necessarily want to give up, right? It might be because you need the money. It might be because it's taking up too much space in your house and your spouse says they can't have it anymore, whatever it may be.
It might be because you want to get down from this rope.
Exactly. It might be you want to get down from the rope, whatever. And let's be honest, it could be that, the person's a really good salesman and they talked you into it, even though you didn't want to, right? I think many of us have had that experience, and yet nonetheless, the sale is good. So, okay. So then we're going to go down, they play out a little bit of, does it actually work? They challenge that and so forth. But now we get to Amar Rava Hilchata. So, I've got a whole bunch of chats. Just okay. Political comments, we'll leave them for the moment. Let's see. Josh, have you read yet? Or
Amarav Hilchata Tzarihu v'Zabin Zabine Zabini. Rabbi says that's the halacha. You hang him and he sells. That's a real sale.
Great.
ולא אמרן אלא בשדה סתם, אבל בשדה זו לא. But we only say this if he says a field. If he says this field, no, that's not a sale. או ובשדה זו נמי, לא אמרן, אלא דלא ארצי זוזי, אבל ארצי זוזי לא.
Wait, I'm maybe going to get into this, but it's just interesting to me. Why? What's the difference in Sadeh Stam and Sadeh Zu?
Good. There's a Rashi on it, which I didn't bring. But if I remember correctly, he essentially says, there's some will that's going on when he gets to choose his own fields.
Exactly.
Right?
If you
And,
say Sadeh Zo, then where is he choosing? Where is his will involved? But if you say Sadeh Stam, then he's choosing A, B, or C. So his will is still there. He's choosing to do it.
exactly. So
But we are recognizing that there's some kind of onus going on here, potentially going on here. But when there's a way out for him, that's not called onus.
exactly. And that's the thing we're going to see is he has to have some proof of free will going on here. Like it can't be completely compulsion. So which I think is the case, right? In all sales, right? You're not completely compelled to sell it, right? There is some choice that you've made. Okay. So good, Josh. So now the case of, do you say the lo art se zuze?
Yeah, so even we don't say this, even if he says so there's this specific field, no man, it's only if he didn't count out the zuzim, didn't count out.
Oh, we've lost Josh, we've lost your audio. Oh, good, you're back.
Okay.
So yeah, we only say that stezo doesn't work if he's not counting out the money, right? But if he counts out the money, if he pulls out the cash, then we say it works. Okay. The sugya is weird here because it's gone from a case where what's the exception to the rule to now what's the exception to the exception, right? So it's a little bit of weird structure. Good, keep going with the sugya.
ולא אמרן אלא דלה הווה להשתמותי, אבל הווה להשתמותי לא. So we only said that if he didn't have a way to avoid this coercion, if he had no way to avoid being hung up on the tree, but if he could have got out of it, no, we don't say it's invalid.
Exactly, right? It is a valid sale then, right? If he had a way out, even if he didn't count out the money, even if it said stay zo, he had a way out and he still was willing to sell. So we let him, we count it as a good sale. So I'm just trying to unnegative, make everything into the positive version here. So, okay, that's all just background. All right, keep going. V'hilchata.
V'hilchata, the real hilchata?
Yeah.
V'chol hu dahavu zvine. ואפילו בשדה זו דהה אישה כשדה זו דמיה, ואמר המימר, תלויה וקדש קידושיו קידושין. Okay, the halacha is that when in all of these, the sale is a sale, even if he says this field, because a woman is compared to a field, and Amemar said that if someone was hung up and forced to Mekadesh, that's real Kiddushin.
Yeah. So by the way, in a Maimar's statement here, who's being hung up and being forced to marry?
The woman.
Good. Yeah, it is the woman. Yeah, it is the woman. Although we're going to see the Bahag is going to read this completely differently. So it's but it's the woman who's being hung up in this case. I'm sorry, I couldn't see who said that, but whoever said that was correct. So I'm sorry for not giving you credit. Okay, that's a Maimar, but what about Bar Rav Ashi?
מר ברב אשי אמר, באישה ודאי קידושין לא הבו. הוא עשה שלא כהוגן, לפיכך עשו עמו שלא כהוגן. והפקעינו רבנן קידושי מיני. Mar Baravashi said, this doesn't work. This is not Kiddushin. This person acted unreasonably. Therefore, we, the rabbis, will be unreasonable and cancel his Kiddushin.
Great. Now, here's the question. D'oraita, does it work?
Right, I was asking myself same question, right? The Lashon Vadai that he used seems to be implying that the Raita shouldn't work, and then he comes up with an explanation that it's only the Rabbanan. So it's kind of implying like an element of fairness that like should be common to everybody.
This is Rashi makes this claim. Tos will get into this a little bit too, right? But it's Deoraita, this works, and Chazal came along, and since Chazal have the power, right, in marriages, they kind of like the power over all of them, they just said like, yeah, this is no good. It's no longer good Deoraita, even though Deoraita without Chazal it does work essentially, right? It's does that work for do people follow what I'm saying? Disagree with what I'm saying? Have other views?
So Joel, are you saying that that'd be the Shita Balit? You saying that that Chachamim are mevatel? It actually works, but the Chachamim are mevatel the kedushin. They don't
Yeah.
like such a kedushin, as opposed to the Rambam who would say it never worked because you
Yeah,
really
exactly.
needed that. But the Bal Yitra I find very interesting because I mean, they're both interesting. Bal
Mhm.
Yitra is interesting because it's a real reform of the system. It should work D'oraita. It does work D'oraita, but we don't like it, so we got rid of it.
Yeah.
And we're actively mevatel it.
Mm-hmm. This is really in the world of Kol de Mekadesh Adate de Rabbanan Mekadesh, right? It's maybe in one way, I don't know, that I've been thinking about this is, Kiddushin and Nisuin is not just like one of these things that has like a formal thing and that's it, and it works in the world and it's done. It's like it requires the kahal a marriage is part of the community. It's something that happens within the community and the community of of Jews. And if the Jews, the Jewish authorities say this isn't the way we want to do it, then they have that ability to say no, that doesn't work. I don't think necessarily that means locally. I mean that like as a more global kind of thing, but
Potentially it could work locally as well. I mean, although to be mevatel, to say you're mevatel, I'm hedging back.
yeah.
To say that you're mevatel, something that works D'oraita, that seems to take a super community.
Yeah, which is
to do that. Yeah.
This is why I think it's right. This is like Chazal in general. This isn't like one Rav who came along and said this. And I don't think it's something that we could just do because I felt like I didn't like the way marriage, was going in this world. I think this takes something bigger. And it's just a guess on my part at the moment, but I think it's an interesting topic to dive into at some point.
Look at Ilana's got a point there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a great question. It sounds like that would make a difference. For
What's
instance,
the question? Read it to us.
Oh yeah, I'll read it. Alana's asking, but are we saying that there was a kiddushin and then we undo it, or there never was a kiddushin, right? Which, for instance, would make a difference to marry a Kohen afterwards, potentially, right? If she was, already married once. My understanding of it is like if ki'inhu Rabbanan l'kiddushay mineh is that this is like already out there in the world is something that stops it from, that undoes it happening in the first place. It was never chal. But maybe I might be influenced by the
retroactive.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. It's retroactively is never a good kiddushin. So which we see in other places, right? Cases where, we'll do at some point kiddushin al tanai, but you can essentially have a marriage that was a good marriage until it wasn't ever a good marriage, potentially, right? So, yeah. Yeah, and it's the Beit Yosef is really influencing me there. So, so it doesn't sound like, by the way, that this ever, it's like, I think any Rav, if she immediately went to the Rav of the town, would say, well, of course it didn't work, and there's no marriage. It's all done. It's all undone. So, but I want to just
it's in the rules, it's in the structure of the rabbinic rules that this doesn't work. Even though in the structure of the Torah rules it does work, but in the rabbinic rules this doesn't work. So right, it doesn't take a pronouncement to undo it. It's just not working.
And that shows the koach of the rabbi.
It does. So
it really shows what you're saying, Nachum. I mean, it shows the koach.
So. All right, good. Josh finishes up.
Sorry, if I could just add to that for a second. It's just interesting
please.
because there's often enough, we have the narrative that Torah defines morality, but just in this case, we see that Shiloh Kilgan is not defined by the way you read the text, but rather by the way Chachamim interpret it. So that's just I thought it was an interesting point.
Yeah, it also might a little bit, speak to a world of, right, you have to, this is why we need Torah Sheba'al Peh, right? You can't just have like a fixed document and everything. There's cases where you see them and you say, hey, that doesn't fit the system. We have to have some power to undo that or to adjust. Okay. Josh, finish us up with Ravina's statement to question to Rav Ashi.
אמר לי רבינה לרב אשי, תנח דקדיש בכספה, קדיש בביאה מה יקלה מימר? Ravina asked Rav Ashi, okay, that's okay if the kiddushin were done with kesef, but if it was kiddushay bia, what are you going to say about that? אמר לי, שבוי רבנן לבילתו בילת זנות. He answered, the Rabbanan considered that bilat znut and not bila l'shem kiddushin.
Yeah, I think they actually turned his bi'ila into bilat znut, right? It's kind of, they placed it as bilat znut.
This is very problematic.
Yeah, please.
From the perspective of what are the retroactive consequences for him and for her. If she had lost her virginity, then there's no mention of compensation. If she has, or I mean, other kinds of effects that there could have in having a mistake like this.
Yeah.
Happen.
Well, this is
And I think that the
honest.
other, sorry.
I mean, no, I mean, there would be, no, I don't think there's no discussion of it, but I think it's obvious that that's Nezikin. Whatever Nezikin he did to her, he has to pay for it.
Right, but the Beilat Znut is talking about, I mean, at least from what we're seeing here, the effect for him, it's not talking about the consequences of this marriage or the annulment of the marriage from the perspective of the marriage. It's just talking about the Bia not having an effect, which I think is different.
Say one more sentence. What do you mean? I think I see where you're going, but just say one more sentence about it, if you could, just to help clarify it in my head.
To say Beilato Beilat Znut is just saying this particular Bia with which he did Kiddushin didn't have an effect for the purposes of marriage is a very limited way of looking at the situation, at the marriage itself from her perspective. All it says is that the marriage didn't take effect, but it doesn't say what are the consequences for the marriage, for the state of marriage, or for the people who are involved. And I think that the other thing that is kind of happening sneakily is that it doesn't say whether he's the one responsible for coercing her. The talyuha could be him, or it could be anybody. The coercion could be much, much bigger than him.
It's a great point. Yeah.
There are broader things that are at stake that I don't think the Gemara is talking about.
Yeah, I think it's a local.
Well,
oh, sorry, Rav Landis, please. Yeah.
no, let's
No, I think
formulate as everyone else is talking. Sarah's talking.
Sarah, did you have a hand up that you wanted to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not clear to me whether what goes on here is actually onus, right? And so, like, I don't think we can kind of easily just be like, oh yes, and also there's all of the kind of legal architecture of onus applied here, because like it's possible, I guess it's theoretically possible she like agrees to have sex with him but doesn't agree to kiddushin, and like maybe that's actually what we mean when we say that we treat this as beilat znut, is that it's nude, it's sort of sex outside the confines of marriage, but it is not rape. So and that I think goes a little bit to Masha's point as well. So I don't know, it just seems complicated to like, I'm just it's not so clear to me like what actually the situation ends up being here to that end.
So I just want to comment on that for a second, just because I think it's a good point of it's here. We've actually gone from a sale where you're forcing the person to sell to a case where like they have different dot in their head. Like she's thinking this is mefateh and pitui, and he's thinking this is kiddushin kind of thing, and he says, oh, this is for kiddushin. She says, no, it's not, right? It's against her will for that, but not even potentially the sex wasn't against her will, right? You can imagine.
Right, like I don't think it has to go all the way to pitui. It could just be she just thought it was, like she may will it, like instead of it being her being kind of seduced into it, quote unquote. Like I don't know, it doesn't have to be that. It can just be that like she thought one thing was happening, he thought another thing was happening. Mm-hmm. Now, like, I mean, I want to leave open the possibility that it is just onus.
Yeah. So
But it's just, it is striking to me that that language, like, no one seems to just, I don't know, maybe somebody saw a Rishon who does this. I would like love to see that, but like, I haven't seen anybody just like bring up.
But
just,
isn't
like,
this case parallel
rape or not.
to, isn't this case parallel to the Kesef case in every way, except for the form of Kiddushin? And if the Kesef case is where she's being forced into marrying this person, I mean, she's being told, Hare, in other words, she knows what's going on. Hare, at mikudesh liba bia zu, and she's being forced to do it. So maybe it's, I mean, maybe she's being forced because of threats. I don't know, but it's a kind of onus. I mean, that's onus, no?
yeah,
I think it's
Well-
parallel to the case of the Sadeh, right? That there is an agreement here. It was forced, but there was an agreement. She did say, I want to sail, I want to marry, right? So that's the parallel. In the Sadeh, it's not like the Sadeh was taken away from him. He agreed to it, but he was coerced into agreeing. And same thing in this case. She said she did accept the money.
Yeah, but
she
she's
accepted the
being,
bill.
we don't know what she's being threatened with. I mean, she's being,
No, but like the
just like
point is that
the guy is being threatened with violence in order to buy
no,
his
the
field.
point is that she
Presumably
accepted
she's
it.
being
It's not
threatened
like
with violence.
Right, yeah.
no, but the
Sarah,
point is
why do
that it
you-
wasn't onus. She accepted it, right? So you can't just
But-
say that like it was like the Kiddushin was against her
No, but
will,
it's an
she did
onus. It's an
accept
onus.
it.
That's the sugya. The sugya is that this is an onus of a sale, being forced
Right,
through
but
violence
the Torah
to
says,
sell
the Torah
a
said that
field.
an onus of a sale works.
Yeah,
that's the
so
same
but it
case
doesn't
here.
mean. But I'm saying, so we have to keep it parallel, don't we? And say that it's a woman also being through violence forced to get married through bia. I mean, so if you put all
The
those things
threat of
together, it
violence.
does seem to sound like what we would call onus.
yeah. So Rev Lennis, did you? Yeah,
Yeah, I saw a couple of things. First of all, right, onus by Kesef, we wouldn't use the word, violent rape or anything because it's Kesef. Onus by Bia here is a funny terminology because there is such a thing as rape, and then there is such a thing as onus that's parallel, like Nachum opened it up for that. That onus is just some sort of force. There's all sorts of forces. That's one of the things we've been seeing up to now in any sort of negotiation. I've done a couple of weddings in which somehow, the parents are screaming, "We spent a fortune on the hotel. You're going to the chuppah." I don't know who that counts for, but it's certainly a kind of onus. It's certainly not a whatever. And so now we plug it in, bad terminology. Now we fit it in with the Bia situation. And what it really shows us is the reluctance of the rabbis later on to use Bia as a form, because it's just too potent. It's just too potent. Kesef can be repaid and shtar can be torn up. But once you have it with Bia, and then you have and the human desire is a person, you go in the mail set, does he want to make his Bia tzanut, or he doesn't care if it's Bia tzanut? So the dissatisfaction with Bia, one way of looking at this overall right now is we're playing through what would it mean to use Bia as a way of doing Kiddushin. And it turns out to be really problematic on so many different levels that we're not surprised that later on that it gets dropped one way or the other.
yeah. I want to.
Oh, go ahead, Joel.
I just want to. I do want to move on a little bit because I number one, Masha.
Wait,
Really
there's one. Let me just ask one more question.
go for it.
What is Ravina thinking at all? Why should Bia be any different from what we said about Kesef? Why should it be different?
Yeah. So I think there's. Oh, Sarah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, one example that I think some Rishonim bring up is, or option is, they say that like that Kiddushay Kesef is Deoraita, or sorry, is Derabanan, and Kiddushay Bia is kind of more Deoraita, and so therefore they can't intervene in quite the same way.
Very problematic answer.
Which, yeah, is a fraught answer in a lot of different ways. But
Good. Yeah. So the Rashi there, Ruben, tell me if I remember the Rashi correct without looking inside. I'm just going to test myself here. Part of it is, right, if you give somebody kesef and it's not for kiddushin, there's other, or not even for a sale, there's other things we could claim it is. It's a matana, right? There's another category you can put that into. And so really the question here might simply be, what categories do we put this bia into if it's not actually kiddushin? And the answer is, oh, it's bilad snut, right? And that's the only difference, is they're just looking for a legal category to put it in.
Yeah, I understood Rashi like a tad little differently as it relates to the legal mechanism of it. Basically, Rashi is saying that as it relates to kesef, like Chacham have the power to make the kesef hefker. So like the kiddushim is never chal because the money that was given to her was never his to start off with. Right?
Hefker beitin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But as it relates to bia, it's an actual ma'aser. Like how could you say that it wasn't his? Like the legal mechanism that you have for kesef doesn't really work for bia.
Yeah. But I'm going to read the Rashi out loud if that's okay with people. It's Yecholim chachamim leafkia kiddushin dehefker beitin hefker. He says it right there. Gabe bamon uchi'ilu kadsha begezel uvechamas damya. All right, so it's like you marrying somebody with stolen money. They can do that. They have that power. Dilo havu kiddushin aval kadish bevia she'asam maaseh begufa. He actually did. This is actually a little bit hitting to this point of like something actually happened here. Heach yomru hachamim shelo tiyeh bia harei bal korchenu biahi, right? And so they don't have that same power with, to generally the hava means that they don't have that power to relegate what kind of sex it was, right? But the answer seems to be that they actually do. They can make it be letznut.
Rashi also says that was Sarah's suggestion that it's because it's sort of the Rabbanan, and then rejects it. So it is an idea out there. But Rashi doesn't like it.
So that is, remember, the Rambam very controversially rules that Kiddushei Kesef is derabanan. It's not so clear what he means there. There's some interesting thoughts. For instance, it might be he just means that it's derived from Midrash and not explicit in the Torah or something like that. But so, all right, good. I wish we could spend we could spend all day on this. It's a really good question, and I think a really sensitive one. So hopefully we showed some sensitivity to it. But I want to, for the moment, move on to a different take on where we get the idea that Kiddushin Shalom Midata doesn't work. So Yavni, you're next, I believe, on my screen. So you Talmud Bavli Yevamot Yud Tet Amud Bet. All right. Oh, just if people don't know this background, that in Yibum, right, there's no Kiddushin Deraita in Yibum, right? It just gets affected by Bia. However, the Chazal instituted a thing called a Ma'amar, where you do essentially like what's like Kiddushin for a Yibum. All right, that's what's called a Ma'amar here. So go for it, Yavni.
Okay. דתניא העושה מאמר ביבמתו שלא מדעתה, רבי אומר קנה, וחכמים אומרים לא קנה. מה הייתה מדרבנן? גמר מביאה דיבמה, מה ביאה דיבמה בעל כורחה, אף קידושין דיבמה בעל כורחה. ורבנן לגמרי מקידושין דעלמא, מה קידושין דעלמא מדעתה, אף קידושין דיבמה מדעתה. במאי כמפליגי, סבר מילי דיבמה ממילי דיבמה, הבלי דמלף, ומר סבר מילי דקידושין ממילי דקידושין, הבלה למלף. Should I translate?
I did do a summary just because I'm only partially interested in the sugi. I'm more interested in the Rashi. So,
okay, it's a question about whether the ma'amar needs to be bidato. One opinion is that it does because because we in kiddushin it does, and regular kiddushin it does, and one opinion is that it doesn't because in doing yibum through bia it doesn't need to be
other way. It doesn't mean to be data. Yeah, so you had the positive on data. I was thinking about the other way, but yes. And so it's a question: do we derive kiddushin from kiddushin, or do we compare the act of kiddushin with its corresponding nisuin act, which in Yevamah would be the ma'amar and the yibum? But what's the assumption in the sugya that's about kiddushin? What does it need to be?
It needs to be midata.
Good. Where did the sugya get that? Read the Rashi.
Kiddushin da'alma והלכה והייתה לאיש אחר midata mashma. We learned from the pasuk הייתה לי איש אחר.
It is right. Ki kach ishisha,
Kach ishisha.
right? Ve'atza ve'halcha li'ish acher, right?
Right.
She
It's because
gets-
she's the active, I think it's just like she's the active subject in that description of getting married.
Exactly. She goes and she is to another person. I think this is where he derives it from, right? So,
And as, yeah, it's very active. It's not a passive acceptance. Like she knows. There was sometimes you get this, mistaken on the term midat. She understands, she accepts, kind of passive. V'halcha.
yeah.
It's very interesting that this Rashi did, no. It's very interesting that Rashi didn't derive it from our Gemara that we just read.
I know. I was a little shocked. Like, why does Rashi?
Rashi has his own Gemara.
He seriously does. I mean, Sarah, go for it, please.
It's because he wants it to be Doraita.
Yeah. I think it
Right?
might,
He doesn't want it to be a Gezerah or Rabbanan. He wants it to have like a biblical basis. So he's found one.
yeah. I mean, I think also just two other things that I think like in the sugya that are going on here. One is they don't quote our sugya from Bava Batra, right? Our sugya, rather they just state it stam, which sounds like they might have some other like obvious place for it. But also because they're comparing the Yibum, which is a whole deraita thing, maybe he feels it needs to be on the same level. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's also, look, the other way is to say Rashi isn't deraita here, right? This is a smachta de alma. And it's just a principle we have that's derabanan. But
I mean, I could add that it's also a bit of a different sugya.
So, sorry, so Rav Linus
Rashi's doing an asmachta. No, I'm not asking you. Are you saying that Rashi did an asmachta?
I'm saying it's possible. I don't think so. He sounds like he thinks it's deraita here, but I think
No,
if
but
he wanted
if he is, and he wants to make the argument of a activity, this very active.
yeah.
Either way, he's making that. Yeah. Okay.
Just to add, I don't think that Rashi can have brought our sugya as an asmachta because it's a bit of a different sugya, right? Like the sugya in Bava Batra, I think, is that it's midata, but the dat was forced, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not shelo midata. It's a bit different. It's like a bit of a technical difference, but it's not the same thing.
Good. And that's a whole nother question. I guess that there might be different levels of it too that we're not thinking about. That it's Bava Batra is she agrees to it at the end, but it's not. She doesn't actually want it versus here maybe it's like completely you don't agree or something like that. It's one is being forced or compelled versus like not even like arising in her mind. We could make that distinction potentially. Look, the other way is to read it like we're going to see the Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, which is essentially that sugya in Bava Batra was about the man being compelled and not about the woman being compelled. And so yes, Sarah, please.
Yeah, I'm just looking this up on the fly. So, but so I just looked at what the Torah Shemima brings on that pasuk just to see like whether Rashi might be getting it from somewhere else. And the one that like seems like a candidate option is the stuff about shtar, right? Shtar erosin shekadvusha lo midata inu mikudeshet. And then what is the verse? The Amar Kra Vahaita, right?
Uh-huh.
So we saw that a few weeks ago. So I don't know if maybe that's like he's not like making up his own asmachta. He's just kind of recontextualizing it or something.
Does the Torah Shemima say that explicitly, or does he?
No, I'm just looking at what the Torah Shemima quotes. I didn't read down far enough to get like what he actually says. I'll update in a moment.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is something I always do when I see if somebody brings a pasuk. I always look in the Torah Tamima if it's a pasuk in Torah or the Chamesh Megillot to see if he brings anything on it. And I don't think I saw anything here, but it's personally I'm a big Torah Tamima fan. So anyway, that's just my plug for Learn Torah Tamima. All right, but with that, let's move on to Sefer Mitzvot Gadol and how and then we'll look at the Rambam, how they paskin on this. So Sarah, you're next on my reading line here. So
okay, so I'm doing a smug.
Yeah, right here.
Okay. Yeah. אין האישה מתקדשת אלא לרצונה, שנאמר והלכה והייתה. משמעות המקרא הוא שמתקדשת מדעתה. והמקדש אישה בעל כורחה אינה מקודשת, אבל האיש שאנסוהו שיקחנו בעל כורחו, הרי זו מקודשת. לעמימר, למר בר אשי, אינה מקודשת, כדאית בפרק חזקת הבתים, that's the sugya we just saw in Bava Batra, והגאונים תופסין עיקר דברי מר בר אשי. So he's got a strange reading of the sugya.
Yes, say more.
So he thinks that if the woman is forced, then that doesn't work. But he thinks that if the man is forced, it does work. Because was someone going to say something?
No, I think
I heard a sound. Okay, sorry. It's just I don't know if I heard like a strange Zoom noise. But okay, so but if the man is forced, then that is effective. And he's getting that from our sugya, presumably by flipping around who is thrown up onto the tree.
Yeah.
So it's not the woman who's thrown up onto the tree, but the man.
So exactly. He has that whole sugya, the debate between Amemar and Mar bar Ravashi is about the man being compelled against his will and not the woman, right? That's what's under debate, and whether or not Chazal, broke up, said it doesn't count as a marriage in that case. But the woman, that's mashma from the pasuk, just like Rashi brought it for us, right?
Yeah.
How do you explain Bahag's position?
My only thing I can get is that he's a different girsa of the Gemara. Instead of Taluha, it must be Tluye, that they hung him or something.
No, I understand how he gets it. I see what he gets it, but how do you understand it?
Oh, how do I understand it? Yeah, good. We're going to get to that, I think, but I think some of it has to do with it's in a system where the man has it's on his dot that the marriage ends, right? That therefore he can be compelled to come into the marriage because he can always end it on his own dot as well. But the woman who doesn't have that ability, I can't remember who I'm getting this from, but we'll see this in one of the later texts. The woman who doesn't have that ability, we can't force her into a relationship that she can't end, in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that might be it, but I was thinking that since with the man, what he's doing is always biodayim. I mean, he is the really active person, even though the halakha shows her activity or whatever, but he's really the one who's active. And therefore that's sufficient to claim there's always that when the man does it, even if though he's been subject to some sort of coercion.
Mm-hmm.
But since he doesn't be a dime, okay, we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting too, because we'll see that for a woman, there might even be cases where she doesn't do anything to reject the kiddushin, where it still might not count, right? Where it's still obvious that she didn't want it, and so forth. So, yeah. Okay, that's the smug, which I think is even though people take his opinion very seriously, it's a little bit of a shocking opinion compared to like when I read through the Gemara, I never would have come up with that. But also gives you a good reason why Rashi doesn't bring the sugya in Bava Batra in Yevamot, because if Rashi were to read it like the smug, yeah, Ruben.
Oh no, it's just really interesting to read the Gemara after once you read the smag. It's just fit in perfectly, even though the opinion is very surprising the first time you read it around, but when you read the Gemara afterwards, you're I see where it's coming from. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, maybe I just misread it the first time, but it's all right. With that, let's continue. Sarah, why don't you take the Rambam too in Hilchot Ishut?
Okay. Ein ha'isha mitkadeshet ela l'ritzona, v'hamekadesh isha be'al korcha eina mekudeshet. Aval ha'isha ansuhu ad sheyikadesh be'al korcho harezo mekudeshet. Ve'yesh le'ish lekadesh nashim rabot ka'achat. V'hu sheyeh be'kesef im kidesh be'kesef pruta l'kol achat v'achat. V'yesh le'achat mihen o la'acher lekabel ha'kedushin al yedei kulan midatan.
I'm a little bit less interested in the end there at the moment, but
yeah. So she has to be married liritzona. I think it's kind of interesting. There are lots of different terms for her consent or non-consent or will or non-will, and how they all map onto each other seems non-straightforward, but okay. Right, so she has to do it of her own will. And also he thinks that if the man does it, or sorry, if yeah, so he's got like both ways around, right? She has to do it of her own free will, and if she is forced, she is not married. But if the man is forced, that works. And then you can do multiple women at once, etc.
Yeah. So how's he reading the sugya? This is one of the.
I mean, is there some reason he can't be reading it the way the smog is reading it?
I think he might be reading it the way the smug is reading it, actually. And here's my personal guess on it. I don't, maybe somebody else can weigh in. He never says derab, right? Ki rabanan af ki inhu, right? He doesn't include that piece in the sugya, which seemed like a pretty important point. He just says it's stam, which might mean that he thinks he's getting that from somewhere else and not from the sugya and Bava Batra.
Right, and that kind of like almost like kefil lashon, like he says it twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the way he says it twice also makes me think that he's like, it's a more forceful statement than like, well, this would sort of work, but we're not actually going to go along with it. It's like, it only works liritzona, and also if you force, like maybe that's just the way he talks, but I think it's like he's like doubling down a little bit.
So
I don't know. I'd have to do more like careful study of like his cases and how he spells them out. But
could that be saying lechatchila and then b'diavad also it doesn't work?
That could be that too.
It's
just I really don't like in that first part of the Rambam. The second part I completely see like the lashon of the Gemara, and the first part seems like it's not from that Bava Batra sugya. But maybe not. Maybe he is, and it's just simplified language. But also the fact he uses ratzon just like the smag does. Rashi did. Rashi still used medata. He didn't use the word ratzon. Okay, with that, read the Ravad, the Hasagata Ravad. This is about the case where you force the man.
Okay, aval ha'ishan suhu ashi kadesh bal korcha harezu mekodeshet aniyam omer vehu sheyomar rotzeani. Good.
That comes from, we didn't read this part earlier in the sugya and Bava Batra. That's one of the suggestions is you have to say rotzeani. And we have this for get too, right? The rule that if you can, if you compel someone to give a get, they have to say rotzeani. And so he's bringing that in here, which makes me think he thinks at least the second part of the Rambam's from that sugya. Okay, good. I'm going to pause for any questions. I apologize. I only, because I'm sharing my screen, I can only see about half of you, so I keep scrolling down to see if anyone else is raising their hand, but just jump in if you need to. Okay. All right. Let's do the Magid Mishnah and then we'll take a break. And then we'll come back, and we're running a little bit behind, but that's okay. Let's see. Josh, you already read. Masha, do you want to read the Magid Mishnah?
Before I read, can I just say one thing about the sugya?
Of course you can. Yeah, of course.
I think there's something to be said both for the Smag and the Rambam about really applying the parallelism of the case of Talvihu vis-a-vin, because when the active party, there's a problem with the way the metaphor is flipped for Talvihu. And I think in some ways it's the more natural reading to say he, the active party, that Zavin is also the active party that Mekadesh. So it's not so crazy, I feel, for them to be reading it, for them to be doing the opposite reading, just on the basis of grammatical parallelism. Okay.
Yeah. No. I think I'm very compelled by that argument.
I disagree. I disagree, though. I think what Yavni is saying, because the seller of the field is being forced to sell. So the woman is the one who's selling herself, essentially.
Yeah.
No, aren't those the two people that are parallel?
Yeah,
no,
I think
she's forced to accept money. She's not forced to sell.
Yeah,
no. So you're right. Sorry.
The seller of the field is being forced to accept money, and the woman is being forced to accept money. Exactly, they're both being forced to accept money.
So
that's why I thought that's what I thought the main problem is, not the linguistic word of who's being hanged, up in ropes, but that could just be a letter missing. But the structure of it is the structure where the seller, the person who's receiving money, is being forced to receive money. That's the way I understand it. But
I think
Masha can argue. I don't know.
Yeah, it's still not a great parallel in that she doesn't have the fully active role in selling it herself, right? He has to do something. So it's but yeah, I will leave that in machloket for the moment and move on to the Magi Mishnah because I think it's good. But so take the Magi Mishnah for us, Masha.
אבל האיש שאנסו לקדש וכולי, זה דעת רבינו, והטעם דעד כאן לא אבחינהו רבנן, אלא כשנאנסה האישה, מפני שאם היו קידושין, לא הייתה יכולה להפקיע עצמה ממנו, אלא ברצונו. So the problem is that once she's married, the woman has no power to remove herself from the marriage, and that's why it has to be done by a rabbinic act to annul the marriage or dissolve the marriage or however. אבל האיש, הרי הוא יכול לגרשה בעל כורחה, והלכה הרי היא מקודשת. But rather the man is able to divorce her against her will, and for this reason she is מקודשת by him, that is that he is the actor. והרב בעל היתור נחלק בזה, וכבר הכריע הרשב"א, זיכרונו לברכה, כדברי רבינו. ובהשגות
Yeah, just right. So the Itur disagrees with the Rambam that you can force a man into a marriage. Right? This is and the Rashba those sides with the Rambam. Just important to note that. Okay, Hasagot either Omer Avraham or Ani Omer. It's the Hasagot Ravad. So.
והוא שיאמר רוצה אני עד כאן.
Yeah.
So he has to actually accept it with his will. ואני אומר שהרי זה כמי שמוכר באונס שהמכר קיים, כמבואר בפרק 10 מהלכות מכירה. So I say that this is just like the one who is obligated in a sale against his will. The sale is valid.
כל שכן.
כל שכן כאן שהוא קונה, שאף על פי שהוא באונס, שקניינו קניין, and all the more so the one who is acquiring, despite the fact that he acquires under force, his kinyan is still a valid kinyan. ולא ראיתי שצריך שם הרע ז"ל, שיאמר רוצה אני, אלא כל הזמן שהוא עושה דבר קיים הוא. He doesn't have to explicitly say the words, I am doing this with my will, but rather the act that speaks for itself, and it's valid.
Exactly. So
that's the term I used earlier, Yodayim,
Yeah. He's doing the actual explicit act of the kinyan, and therefore it was the Magid Mishnah where I got my answer about him being able to get out of the marriage, by giving a get. Well, she can't do that. I will say that he also sees here, he sees the parallel between the person who's hung up for sale and the man, right? That's a better parallel in his thing. So maybe that goes with Masha's reading. It could be, it's so. All right, we will. Any final questions or thoughts before we take a break? And we'll come back. We'll do the tour. And in the tour, we're really going to focus on this tshuva of the Rosh that he brings of his fathers, and also a tshuva that is some parallels to it that the Beit Yosef brings. And then we'll. And then maybe we'll get on to Edut, and if not, we'll do all Edut next week. So, all right, I'll see everybody in 5 minutes. Let's see who hasn't read. Alana, do you want to read?
I'm just making it bigger on my screen here.
No problem.
Okay. אין האישה מתקדשת אלא לרצונה נתקדשה, שלא לרצונה אינן קידושין.
So I just want to stop you there. Just note he's got the double language similar to the Rambam, right? But maybe that is lechatchila b'diavad language. So anyway, keep going. It's
interesting. I thought it was just for emphasis, but okay. נשאל לאימא הראש.
Adoni Avi Harosh.
Adoni, thank you.
Yeah.
Admor Adoni Harosh Zal. Something Shamra.
It's just Leah. It's a name of a person, Leah.
Leah Shamra the Reuven. Ten Li Manasha Tachayav Li. Okay, so that's going back. Benatan Leda Gimel Shitim. Because Natman Leda Amarla Hariach Mikudeshet Li. כששמעה השליחה המיעוט ואמרה, אני רוצה לקדש.
Well,
Ina.
yeah. So.
Sorry, I was, for the record, I prepped off of the sheet you sent on Tuesday.
Fair enough. No, you're doing great. I just wanted to make sure.
No, I appreciate it. Leda. Okay, אמר לה, הרי המקודשת לי, כששמרה השליחה המיעוט, ואמרה, איני רוצה לקדש, אוקיי, ועדים מעידים בזה, והשיב שאין כאן בית מיחוש, ואינה צריכה גט, אוקיי, וכתב הרמב"ם.
Actually, just we'll stop there for the moment and just yes. Yeah. So
it doesn't need a get, is the upshot.
Good. Well, the whole problem that's going to present itself here isn't that obvious?
Because he owed her money, so we're classifying it as a repayment of the debt and not a.
Well, it's obvious that we said a woman who gets married against her will, which it sounds like from the beginning, right? She just thinks she's receiving payment for she's a balat chov, right? That for a debt that she's getting, and he like the last minute throws it in. It's like, hey, guess what? I'm going to use this to be mekadesh, to do kiddushin. And she's like, no, right? Like, why would the Rosh even have to answer this shaila? Like, why did it make it to the Rosh's desk, kind of thing?
Because it seems like she's receiving the money.
Good. It could be. We're going to see that if we have some time, some answers onto why, if we have time to look at the Bach, why this is even in the Beit Yosef, even a question. Sorry,
if I could just make a short observation, like
yeah,
here in this case, the first sentence of the Torah is different from the Rambam because he doesn't mention Baal Kocha, right? It doesn't mention Baal Kocha at all. So that's why the question comes in, because here she knows about it. It's not Shalol Tzona, but it's just not Baal Kocha, right?
And the she needs Ratzon, but she can have some compulsion of there, is what you're saying.
Which is like it's a tad different. I don't know if it's worth like spending time on it, but it's just like different version. I would say that the Torah is not similar, is not the same as the Rambam.
All right,
that's how the kasha comes up.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see where the Torah gets that, but yeah, it could be a very meduyak reading in the Torah. That's possible.
I think they're delving into the nature of the woman's ratzon. Like she has the ratzon to receive the money, so they're getting, she can have ratzon to receive the money for the repayment of the debt, and she can have ratzon to not become engaged, or she's not receiving the money for that purpose. And I think they just need to spell that out.
Could be, yeah. So in other words, that you could have said, "Oh, I saw her receive the money," but here she does throw it, right? She immediately throws it.
Yeah.
So some people are going to make a claim that this, I'll just say it out, that this case is a case where she's in her own like courtyard, let's say, it's like she doesn't throw it away from her own possession. It's still in her possession when she throws it. And so maybe that's not so obvious, but it is a little surprising. Look, the other possibility I'll throw out there is until the Rosh, even by the time of the Rosh, maybe there was still a machloket about this a little bit. Maybe some people were not reading like the Bahag. They were reading like a Meimar in the Sugya, and that it was about the woman, and then maybe there was still a machloket in the Rosh's time. I don't know. And he's clarifying, no, we can't say that.
Correct. I think what's difference between here, to me, I think what's different between here and the Shulchan Aruch is that she says something here, right? She's saying, I don't want to be engaged to you, and the Shulchan Aruch, she just threw the money away.
Good. We'll look at the Shulchan Aruch is basing himself. The first part of the Shulchan Aruch is to be basing himself on a different tshuva. So yes, it's a tshuva actually there of, I believe it's the Hagot Maimoniot tshuva that he's going to base himself on, and not on the Rosh. So
got it. Well,
yeah.
I think it's interesting that she gets to talk here.
So also fair. Yeah, we don't, look, we don't see that a lot, but there's, a woman is definitely can respond during Kiddushin, to say, hey, I agree, or to say I don't agree, right? And so this is the we're very used to it, I think, in most Kiddushin, at least that I've seen, where the woman doesn't say anything. Although I think Rav Linzer brings up an idea that maybe, like, it's a nice way to do things, that she says something. She says, I need mekabelet or something like that.
In our situation, we got married. Full of stories today. I'm sorry. And
Okay.
Under the cup, really had Gedolei Torah, Baron Salvation, bless him. The Shabbos before that, she's not getting married unless she says the same number of words I say, or approximately. So I went through Tanakh. When I hit share sharing with all the lovey-dovey stuff, she closed the book. I went back to Navi, and I went to Amos Gimel Gimel. Anybody know that one? We got a Tanakh there. When she opened her mouth before you quoted, I thought Rav Aaron's Zatzal was going to faint, because he saw something coming. And what's the pasuk?
Rav Les, you asked.
It's part of Treasor.
Oh yeah, I know. Amos Gimel Gimel. Oh, Hayelchu Shnaim Yachdav Bilti Im Noadu. Wow. Oof. That's right.
And when I said to Cheryl, she said, that's the pasuk, and that's what she used.
Wow.
And that's actually the one that my daughter used, and pasuk that my daughter used.
So,
and other Talmudot. So far, anyway, so Rav Aaron had a big smile on his face and gave me a little something, and he says, okay. And then he said, there's nothing else going on, right? So that was it.
But so good. Rav Nachum, you look like you wanted to say something too. So okay, good. So that's the that's the case that we saw so far about the woman's ratzon. Does she need ratzon? So Alana, continue. He's going to quote the Rambam here about the man.
Okay. כתב הרמב"ם ז"ל, אבל האיש שאצלו וקידש קידושיו קידושין, וריף כתב שאין קידושיו קידושין, וכמו כתוב בעל העיטור.
Chen katav probably, but
yeah. Chen katav. Okay. Yeah. So it doesn't look like the tour is going any further with the concern. He's just satisfied.
Yeah.
With okay.
But although we'll see, right? This is like really interesting in two ways for me. It's really interesting. One is that it's like a pretty major machloket between the Rambam and the Bali Torah and the Rif, right? Which is not something we see very often, where the Rambam paskins against the Rif. I don't know how many times it is, but I think it's a fairly rare occurrence. So, and I don't know if we have explicitly with the Rosh, because I don't think the Shulchan Aruch ever has names what the Rosh, or the Beit Yosef names what the Rosh says about this. So, but okay, obvious, at least in the Torah's world, that a woman cannot be, that she needs her ratzon to do kiddushin, and it's a machloket. He leaves it as if a man needs ratzon to do kiddushin or not, or he can be forced into it. So, all right, I want to look at the Bach, which is Nishal Adoni Avi Harosh. Let's see who hasn't read. Andres, you want to read this in my Bach? This I put it in the source sheet. You can look at it there. Maybe we'll do it that way. Just but people probably have the Bach. Gershom says close to 50 occasions the Rambam disagrees. Right. That's not very many. In fairness, right? It's okay. So maybe I'll share my screen again, and. we'll make this full size. And here's the Bach. You can also look at it in the tour.
Right.
Right. Andres, go ahead.
נשאל לאדוני אבי הראש, לאה שאמרה וכולי. כלל
I think it's just, he's telling you where to find this in the
okay.
that you got. So
אוקיי, סעיף י"א, ואיכא למידק, לאיזה צורך הביא רבנו תשובה זו? הלא כבר כתב דשלא לרצונו אינו קידושים כלל, ותו דהפשיטא דפשיטא היא דאין כאן בית ניחוש, שהרי אפילו לא הייתה אומרת כלום, אלא השליחה לפניו מיד אינה מקודשת כדי להעיל בסימן למד. כל שכן באמרה גם כן איני רוצה להתקדש, ואפשר... Should I translate there? Okay, so...
Yeah, stop there. Great.
So he says, so it is necessary here to be precise and to say why does the tour bring this teshuvah, because we just said at the beginning that if she doesn't want any kiddushin, so what is there more to say to this? If she says, and even more in this case where there is no doubt, like Beit Michush, is that no place for doubt? Yeah,
it's pita de b'shita. It's the most obvious thing that there's no mechush, right? It's just like a wonderful language here. So,
and because in this case she says herself that she doesn't want to be mekudeshet, and
where we already said that in a case where she doesn't even have to, where she doesn't say anything, she just throws away the ring or the kesef, whatever it is, right? That's not kiddushin. And here, not only she throw it away, she also says, "I don't want it."
She doesn't want it. Yeah.
You know, it's like this is the more. I think that's why it says pshita de pshita, right? It's like there's two ways that she proves her dot in this case, and so like why is it even a question? So keep going. דעתה לאריה. It comes to
ואפשר דעתה לאריה, אפילו הייתה אישה עומדת בחצרה, כשהשליכה המעות מידה, עדיין היו הקידושים ברשותה. So I translate until there. So maybe what was happening is that מה זה לאריה?
To teach. Comes to
okay, to teach, to enlighten us. אפילו הייתה אישה עומדת בחצרה. So she was, or I don't know if it's the same woman, but she was there in the same woman while she was throwing the coins from her hand, and it was still kiddushin there, like
the kiddushin, the kesef kiddushin is still in her rishus. In other words, like imagine this, right? It is she's in her courtyard. He hands her the kiddushin, and potentially like she throws into a box, right? That's her box, you know, something like that. You can imagine that. It's like it stays in her territory. So he's going to say, what's the hava amina then? So keep going.
והווה אמינא דאין זה דומה להשליכה לפניו דאינה מקודשת דלא השליחתן ברשותה, אבל איכה דהשליחתן ברשותה מקודשת, כמה שמלן. כיוון דאמרה בפירוש, איני רוצה להתקדש לך, אין לחוש לקידושים כלל.
Great.
Okay. So what is a hava amina? That this is not like
right. This is, you can help you out a little bit. Is that okay? So
yeah.
Right. That you might have said, okay, the case in Siman Lamed when he hands her the kiddushin and she throws it back at him, essentially, right? That's like they're in his house, or they're standing in like in Rishut Rabim kind of thing. And here they're in her chatzter. Potentially, he's adding this piece to it, this okimta. And he says they're in her chatzter. Maybe you would have said that because she didn't throw it away from her own possession, right? It's still in her chatzter, that maybe that would count, right? And so the Rosh comes to teach us that since she said explicitly, I'm not throwing it just to like put it aside. I'm like, I really don't want this. right? Again, maybe think about it of like, she takes the ring and she casts it into a box that she owns, right? You might say, oh, she was just like putting it aside. She wasn't actually saying no. And so the fact that the fact that she said something to it, even though it's still in her possession, means that she didn't want it for the sake of Kiddushin. And the Rosh therefore says, is coming to teach us, Kamash Malan, that's enough to say that it's not even a mechush, right? We don't even say safek, right? Nothing, no Kiddushin happened there. Does that case make sense to people? How he's made no kimp down the Rosh's case here?
So the HaEzer is the most important thing here that the Bach says.
Exactly. He's added in that it must be in her territory, in her possession. Right. So
nice.
This case. Okay. But he's not done. All right.
והמעיין בתשובה יראה דעיקר תשובתו דלא מקרי כל אלא כגון פלוני שמע מפלוני וכולי. כדלקמן בסימן מב, כיוון דליתנהו עדים. כמן סבירי איניש קושטה כאמרי, אבל אחא שהעדים לפנינו הווי קול
שוברו.
ושוברו עמו.
Good. So stop there for a second. This is a little bit difficult, but maybe we can
and the person that goes and wants to see more into this teshuva would discover that the most important thing is that the loy mikri kol, like
this is like a rumor that goes out that this woman was married, right?
When someone says Ploni, her from Ploni,
exactly,
and so forth, as it is taught in that Siman.
But it's only kevan de leitnuhu edim, when there's no there's no edim in front of them, right, to prove this point one way or another. So
that's why it's a rumor, I imagine.
Yeah, savri inche kushta kamre, that people think that he was speaking the truth, that they actually were, that this call is correct, right? But here they're edim, so.
But here that we have it in front of us, then we have a call the shovro imo. What is this?
A shovar is a document that nullifies something, So for instance, like when a woman collects her ketubah, she gets a shovar to prove that she collected the ketubah already, right? And so here he's saying, here we have a rumor that they got married, but then we have the shovar. Essentially, she yelled out, "I don't want it," and she threw it, right? And that's enough to break this down, right? You can't even claim there's a call here, all right? Even though there's edim. So, okay. And we're going to skip the rest. He's going to get into like the details of. There's a debate in the Gemara and Gittin between, I think, Surah and Pamandita about whether or not we can be mevatel hakol and so forth. But I don't want to get into that right now. So we're gonna stop there just based on time. So all right, he's just going to say we paskin like Surah that we can be mevatel hakol. You can undo it. Okay, but okay, good. Any questions there? Any thoughts before we?
I have a question and a thought.
Yes, of course.
Does anybody think this? Can anybody see how this answers Joel's original question about why this beginning of the whole tour is talking about the ratzon of the woman, and then we're going to talk about edim? I think we just have an answer here now.
We do, yeah. So, but I'll let somebody else say it for the moment. So.
Sorry, but isn't the Bach saying that the edim are irrelevant? Forget the second part where he explains the rest of the tshuva. It seems to say that so long as she says, like, I don't want it, that's it, there's no kiddushin. Right?
Yeah,
so
it sounds
Bach
like.
seems to be saying that edim are totally irrelevant. Like, he's basically skipping the part of the Rosh.
Of
the Rosh tshuva and just like explaining why it brings the edim into question. But as far as he's concerned, like, we don't need edim.
I mean, listen, essentially, we already learned that a woman's ratzon is required when we learned Siman Lamed. We learned that if she throws away the money, all these different fancy things that she does, we were trying to tease out what is her will without her actually saying it. We're trying to find out, but because it's so important, we know that her will is required. So what is the new element that we're getting in here? If we already knew that in Siman Lamed?
Yeah, it's that. Well, number one is that we need the edim can testify that she didn't want it. Right, is the first thing,
and therefore it also discusses something we talked about earlier. Right, exactly. The edim, exactly. So therefore, we talked about what do the edim have to witness, and I was pushing to the point that the edim have to just witness the fact. Did she get the money? Did the money go into her hand? And they just went, but now I think we're actually adding a little bit more. And finish my sentence, Joel.
So that they actually have to witness that it went to her hand Berat son, right? That she had the will to take that for the sake of Kiddushin, right? It's
right. We're adding to what the Eidim have to be witnesses of. They have to be witnesses of her ratzon, and therefore, if they just came and say, "Well, we saw her take the money," and it's true, she put it in her box, like Joel said, in her box in her HaEzer, but we saw her take the money, and he said, "Harei Mekudesh li." So we don't care.
But I think it's a very good point, but I think it's not even in a normal financial thing, A gives to B, but here Ratzon is part. In other words, it's part of what it's all about. It's not even an addition. I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying you can just say it even stronger. That's what Kiddushin is. Ratzon is built into that.
Right. So the Eidim have to be witnesses to the giving of the money and to the acceptance of the money with Ratzon. And that's why this chapter is really about Eidim.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Very good.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that connection. I'm thinking about just in terms of time, and I apologize for this. What I think I want to do is go to the Shulchan Aruch now. The Beit Yosef, we're going to see in the Ramah, actually, he's going to bring the tshuva that the Beit Yosef brings in a very much a shorter version of it. But if you haven't looked at it, I think it's very worth reading. And let's see, who's next up to read? Has everybody, is there any, Gersh, did you read?
No, sorry.
Would you like to read?
Shulchan Aruch.
Shulchan Aruch Membet Seif Aleph.
Okay, hold on, sorry, let me just find it here. Sorry.
While he's looking, Can I say one quick thought?
Of course.
I don't think it's only, to speak to what Rav Landis and Rav Nachum were saying, I don't think it's only that the Eidim are testifying what they saw. I think it's that they also can extrapolate to her ratzon. So they're now doing, it's not like they're just a video camera. They're also now doing an interpretive act.
Yeah, what we're going to deal with, this is where I think the Beit Yosef is actually very helpful there, though, too, is a question of how much can they interpret of, that, because it could be possible that, she did want it, and then after she wanted it, she didn't want it, right? Which is like a really interesting, but so she accepted the Kiddushin, but then she changed her mind, and then it's maybe too late. And so it's a very difficult balancing act there. But yes, I think you're right. That was me just talking, essentially. So that's good. Gersh, you ready for the Shulchan Aruch?
Yep.
Go for it.
Okay. הם מקדשים אל רצון האישה בפני בית עדים ובו...
Wait, are you in Membet?
Yeah. אין האישה מתקדשת אל רצונה.
Great.
והמקדש אישה בעל כורחה אינה מקודשת, אבל האיש שאנסו ועד שקידש בעל כורחו, הרי זה מקודשת. ויש אומרים שאינה מקודשת, הלכך אבל ספק.
Good.
So pretty much the same as the Rambam here, I think.
Well, the end, the Yeshomrim.
Yes, the Yeshomrim. Rambam barely brings Yeshomrim. Okay, so
the Yeshomrim is the Bali Tur and the Reef against the Rambam, in fact. So it's
okay.
But good. I don't know if you noticed those, because it was brought up before, right? That the Tur's language, where he only uses Ratzon and doesn't use in his doubling of the language, right? Bal Korcha, he's restored that language here, right? He says, right, starts out in a Hisha Mikadeshet El Lerchana, but one who does it, Bal Korcha doesn't count, right? And not like the Tur said of, what was the actual language? The Tur said Shalol Lerchana. And Bal Korcha may not be exactly the same, potentially. So
I also find it interesting in these cases the beginning of it, Ein HaEsha rather than Lashon Asur.
Yeah.
So I always wonder what you can read out of that. It seems much more, maybe it's to highlight the highly Derabanan nature of this. I don't know.
That's a great question. So as opposed to why doesn't it say Asur Leish Litgadesh Ishan Bal Korcha or something like that?
Because no, we're talking about the status, not talking about the action.
Yeah. So
In other words, it doesn't work, but there's no isser to try. It just doesn't work. You can't do it.
Yeah.
In the end, there is no such thing as, it's just like you can't mikadesh a non-Jew. It just doesn't work.
So it's something that, yeah.
True.
So there can't be an isser to
That's
do
what I
it.
mean.
It can't really be an isser to marry a non-Jew because it can't happen. It doesn't happen.
It's a great point. Kiddushin in Tofsin, right? That they don't hold. So, but all right, good. Keep us going for the Haggah. And this,
Just a quick question. How do you guys read Haveli Safek? Is it the Shulchan Aruch not taking a stance? Or is just saying that Kiddushin Safek, that she has like that's her status is like not, it's unsure.
I think
I just wasn't sure what he meant by that.
I think you need to get me chumrah. This is like all the other cases where we have a machloket rishonim and we're not willing to decide, and so we think that safek is enough, in the deen to require a get l'chumrah or derabanan. It's it could be derabanan as well, but so.
In other words, there's always a tikkun, and you have cases of money. You got to give the money to either the Reuven or Shimon. We can't be Yotzei all the day, because if one day it says it goes to Reuven and one to Shimon, so somebody has to have the money. But in such a case of Kiddushin, we can Mekayim Divrei HaKol. We can give a get if they want to really be separate. If they want to be married, we can get them married again. So why not do that?
So now I'm trying to remember where I saw this. One of the Achronim makes a comment that he says, well, there might be some safek for the woman's side too, right? There's the Amemar statement that you could read as her, that it counts. And he says, well, we can't do that because there isn't a fix, because what if she wants to marry Kohen afterwards? I think I have to look and see who it was again. I can't remember, but so there's kind of a fix.
That's a good point. It's a good point. We're still, by leaving it as a safek, we're creating a certain problem.
Yeah. So, but all right, let's read the Haggah. Gersh, if you would read the Ramah for us.
Haggah, אמרה תחילה קדשני וזרק קידושין לתוך חיקה, ואמר לה, הרי את מקודשת לי, ונערה בגדיך תוך כדי דיבור, השליך ממנו הקידושין, ואומרת שלא כיוונה מתחילה, רק לשחוק בעלמא. אפילו כך היא חווה מקודשת. According to the Moram, Sof Sefer Nashib.
Yeah. That's the big case that Beit Joseph brings up. I just want to make sure it's right. She says, marry me initially, right? He does the action, and then all of a sudden she's like, no, and she like tosses the ring, right? And we know this, like principle toch kedei b'dibur, it maybe doesn't mean anything in Kiddushin. And also she initially did this, she made it her dad very clear that she wanted it from the get-go. Right. So, okay. Sorry, that was all interruption. Keep going.
That's fine. אין הולכים בעניין קידושין אחר אומדנות והוכחות המוכיחות שלא כיוונה לשם קידושין. לקח קידושין.
Yeah, stop there. So, and explain.
I guess I'm not sure I understand this. Sorry.
This is also comes from the Beit Joseph. We don't make estimations and bring psychological proofs, I guess it would be the way to say, of like, of what her dot was. Did she want it? Did she not want it? Right. We essentially have to have like objective, visible evidence one way or another. It's like either she said, she tosses and says, I don't want to, or, she says at some point, or it says nothing, or she says, I do want it, and that's all we have to go on. We can't say that, oh, maybe as he was throwing it to her, she changed her mind because afterwards she tossed it. We don't get into those nuances. We assume that's Kiddushin.
No pilpul, no Freudian psychology, no tricks, no tricks.
But isn't this only in one direction? In other words, we're always going to say that she's Mekudeshet. As we're not going to, in other words, that's his point. We're not going to make
Yeah.
umdana to get her out of the problem of being married. If anything happens, we're going to go l'chumra and say she's married.
Yeah. So I think if we were like playing the kind of the approach of like balancing the different things of, on one hand, we're afraid of Eshet Ish, right, which is a major concern. And also we're afraid of, her being stuck in a marriage she didn't want, that in this sense, the Beit Yosef and the Ramah quoting him is siding with the side of Eshet Ish is the concern here. So, which I personally struggle with, I'll just say, but this is the way that the Ramah is ruling. So
I heard that is like basically very limited to a certain period of time. After that, that's it. It's gone to the wind. I mean, like we don't consider it anymore.
Mm-hmm. So,
right. If she didn't say explicitly, and now a week later she comes along and says, "Well, but when I dropped it, that's what I meant." So we don't do that.
Exactly. So, but okay. Any other thoughts on that before we go on? Because that is I don't know. It's a difficult topic, I'd say. Okay. No one hates me yet. Good. This next piece is, keep going, Gersh.
לקח יד האישה בחזקה שלא ברצונה וקידשה, והיא לא זרקה כקידושין, הווה מקודשת. אף על פי שמתחילה באונס, היה. ונתן לה סתם, ולא אמר לה כלום, הואיל ומתחילה דיבר עמה מקידושין. היה חייב להמעות, ואמרה לו...
That's to me the next case. So let's just deal with that. Yeah.
So if he gives her wife behezkah shelo bertzona on the assumption that it was essentially against her will, or she didn't concede to it. The kidsha, and she's therefore she has kiddushin. She didn't throw the kiddushin in. Then she's mekudeshet because she's made no explicit action that she refuses it. At least that's how I understand it. Afar pisha mitchila be'ones, even though in the beginning it might have been against her will. But Natan la stam, and he just gave her the money. He didn't say anything to her to explicitly. He didn't say anything to her. Because it's like they were talking about kiddushin. So the man obviously thought that because they were dealing with iskei kiddushin, then obviously the act of giving money would then suffice.
Exactly. We're going to see the Beit Shmuel on that in a minute, but just this is if you notice, the Ramah is bringing a set of chuvot on this topic. He brought the one from the Hagot Maimoniot that the Beit Yosef quotes. Now he brings this another one, which is from the Hagot Mordechai, and he's going to bring the third one, which is going to be the Rosh. So,
sorry, wouldn't that go against the Gemara? I mean, and even if you look at the Smag, it would go against the Torah. I mean, either or, I don't see how that works.
Good. Say more.
Well, I mean, if you go according to the Gemara, it didn't do right by her, so therefore the money is not valid, right? It's like he stole it, whatever. And even if you go according to the Smag, per the Torah, you need to have her dat. And clearly here, there's chazka that she's not willing to be mikadeshet. She's not willing to be mikadeshet, if that's the right term.
Yeah.
So either or, I don't see how you could work that out. Like, how is she even mikudeshet in the first place?
Yeah. Well, so everyone seems to even bring up the fact that actually that he's essentially Mimai Nafshach with the Shulchan Aruch, because in another place he paskin, this is part of the Hagot Mordechai, and another place he paskins like the Ramah, the Abulafia Ramah, the one with the hay, where he says that this doesn't work, and so it's like he seems to be contradicting himself in two places here.
In this case, is he paskining that Bal Karcha works or doesn't work?
It does work if she doesn't do anything to reject it, essentially.
So then it's not Bal Karcha.
Yeah, good.
So he's posketing that it has to be with her will. It's just saying that if he lo zarka kiddushin, that's considered a passive agreement.
Yeah. So
he's requiring her opinion, her consent.
It's not balkocha, but it's shalol ritzona.
Yeah. It is l'ritzona because she didn't throw away the money.
No, she has the chazaka. You can't just she didn't throw the money. Therefore, we assume
money. He grabbed her and he put the money in her hand, and she said, Oh, okay, whatever.
So how is that different from the case where she's hanging from a tree?
Because she had no because where she's hanging from a tree, where she's being
Or is
threatened,
it similar?
she's not being threatened.
It's the same case.
No,
What?
it's not,
think
because there she's
the
being
answer is
threatened
there's-
with bodily harm. Here she's not being
Right.
threatened with any bodily harm. She's just,
No, he grabbed her and forced her
she's
to
just
accept the money.
inoperative. She's not acting. She's being receiving it in her hand by force, but then she still has an opportunity to throw it away. And she
I
doesn't
mean,
Yeah, but
choose
it's still
to do that.
coercion. Like, I mean,
Alana, go
the
for it.
basic principle behind the case is the same, right? She's being coerced to do something she doesn't want.
So hold on, let's get Alana in here, and then
I
maybe
was just
we'll.
gonna say, Ruben, I would read it as there's two parts. Part one, she's on the tree and forced. Part two, now she's down from the tree and seems to consent. And I think if there's this two-part process of, first by her ratzon and then forced, or the opposite, first forced and then by her ratzon, in a situation where she's on the tree and then she's down from the tree, it's gonna seem, we're gonna say, no, she had ratzon, she changed her mind.
Good. Maybe I'll just read. If people look in Gimel in the Beit Shmuel, we're going to look about, I don't know, a little more than halfway down. He says, "V'chein yesh lomar, uvda behagot Mordechai." People have that. So good. I'm seeing some thumbs. All right. I just want to read this quickly. He says, "V'chein yesh lomar, uvda behagot Mordechai, haya gam ken b'tchila haya ratzona litkadesh lo, ve'achar kach lakach yada bechazaka." As Alish Dainhu, that she should cast it away. Vim loni ara kiddushin have kiddushin kevan shaya betchila ratzon shala. So it's actually a little bit different case than you're saying, even Alana. He said initially she said, yeah, they're having a discussion about kiddushin. Says, yeah, I'd love to get married to you or whatever it is. But then he happens to maybe she doesn't expect it to be right now. Then he grabs her hand, right, and sticks the kiddushin in it. And then she has a chance. She could just cast it away and reveal. And she says, no, like Rav Nachum was saying, kind of okay, wasn't expecting it at the moment. But the fact that he even has to make this, right, special, so Kimta kind of reading on that thing, I think, Ruben, he's bothered by the same thing you're bothered in he's bothered by many things, actually. He's bothered by the fact that he's posting differently somewhere else. But yes, Sarah.
Just I think I made this point to you, Joel, already, but just to sort of amplify Ruben's line of concern, right? In Ketubot, the language of Tchila be'ones made me think of that language in Ketubot also, where it's used to talk about rape, where there's also Tchila be'ones sofa ratzon, and there we say she's permitted to her husband in that case. So the assumption is that we go based on the initial thing, initial force, as opposed to the later ratzon. So I think that case has got kind of interesting comparison. I don't 100% know what to do with it, but it seems potentially relevant.
I don't think it's comparable, really, because I think there it's specifically because in the act of the sexual intercourse, a person may acquiesce, but that's because of the natural human desires, and it's not a valid acquiescence. Whereas here we're talking about money, and there's no emotion, there's no chemical processes going on.
Yeah, right, sure, but I guess I'm wondering whether there's a similar kind of dynamic that could happen where she
likes a diamond very much. She sees it.
Yeah, well,
so
either the sort of capitalist frame that sort of we were talking about earlier, right? Maybe she's drawn in by some other economic thing, but also just that she's afraid, right? Once he's grabbed her hand, she's afraid, and she doesn't feel like she can, her ability to say no is sort of fundamentally compromised.
We don't say that. We don't say that. That's the distinction. Those two Gemaras are distinct.
Yeah.
There we say her later acquiescence is not her true intention, and here we say no. We're giving her the credit to be able to have a dot even in this circumstance.
I don't see it either way. I see it that we're worried about her status. Worry about her status, and we can't keep the status ambiguous. I don't think, in other words, no one thinks it's a great way of doing chuppah and kiddushin. No one thinks it's a great way of doing it, but in case it happens that way, she can't have an ambiguous status. So they come down this way. It's not a great case. It's an awful case.
Yeah, I think Rav Linus too. I think this gets into the messiness of this too, right? Which is what we're dealing with here, right? Which is it's like a nice case to say, does she have ratzon? Does she not have ratzon? But the whole case that we saw about you hanging someone on a tree and forcing them to sell, right? It's really a messy case of, right? The Gemara admitted there's always other competing factors in any transaction we make in life, right? And so it's really a difficult question of, we'd love it to be very simple of like, yeah, it's like a pure love between these two people, and and they both want it, and there's no other factors. But like Sarah, as you were saying, like people have all sorts of factors going into their marriage, and the question is, at what point do we say it is not ratzon, in what case do we say it is ratzon? And I think, as Rav Lan has put it, we unfortunately have to make clear eliminations in these cases. And this is a case where the Ramah, you could go the other way. You could say that she's not married, but you'd have to make a distinction of when he puts it in her hand. I still want to say it's not, as Rav Nachum pointed out, it's not the same thing as like, raping somebody or even like, physically forcing them. Here it just sounds like he grabs her hand and sticks it in, right? It's not like, which is also a violation, but it's not, maybe I shouldn't say that, but it doesn't feel like, especially since they were talking about it and so forth, that maybe it's not quite, it's maybe a problem, but not to the same extent a problem.
I would add, I've been thinking throughout the case, the grandmother used to grab my wrist and force 50 cents so I would buy ice cream. So, but the truth is I really wanted to buy the ice cream, so whatever. But it could be, I just wonder, it's such an abhorrence, this kind of grabbing is so abhorrent to us, whether or not the chazaka changes in some level. Mm-hmm. But that we can't assume it. But again, we're afraid that she'll have an ambiguous status. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, no, it's look, it doesn't help things, but it I don't sit easy with this piece here of the Ramah, but I don't think that helps anybody. So, but and you can see the Beit Shmuel also doesn't sit so easy with it, right, at the end of the day. So. Okay, good. Anybody have anything to say to that? Just before we have a few minutes before we finish the Shulchan Aruch, so I just wanted to.
It's really an odd question, but the fact that she's surrounded by other people, the fact that there's Edom, could that be seen as an extra pressure for her to say yes, as opposed to be like having a true dot and just like really accepting it?
I think that sits out there of like this whole question of, is there ever a case where it's truly l'ratzon? And it's not so easy, okay, good. Gersh, let's finish up Haya Chayav Lamaot, just to finish up the Shulchan Aruch.
Okay. Right. Haya Chayav Lamaot ואמרה לו, תן לי מאותי, וכאשר התחיל ליתן, אמר לה, הרי את מקודשת לי, וזרקה היא המעות מידה, אינן קידושין. So in this case, when he's obligated to pay her some money, maybe he's paying her back for a loan, and she says to him, give me this money, give me my money, effectively. And when he starts to give it, he tries to sneak in Kiddushin, he says, Harei ad mekudeshet li. And immediately she's so disgusted that she throws this money down as a clear signal to him that she refuses Enan Kiddushin. So this is not Tofet.
Great, and that was the tshuva of the Rosh that the Torah brought. So. But good. So we have 5 minutes left. I just want to end. We will get into Edut next week, although we've already started to touch on it. And I will have sources hopefully by tonight, my time for you. Some of them will be the sources you've already seen for. Should be Seif Bet on the document, which I have is unfortunately Siman Bet. The other thing, I want to say, like, I appreciate this is a hard topic. Like nobody wants to see Kiddushin done this way. I'm definitely not Chazal. You know, hopefully I didn't say anything to offend anybody or that was too bad. And if I did, please feel free to let me know. So that's anybody want to take any last comments on this? Any last thoughts? Okay, a due next week. The one other thing is we'll do some sources, but I want to spend a little bit more time. If you notice, there's a lot of Beit Yosef on the Edut stuff. And instead of just bringing all the sources, I think we should spend some time with the Beit Yosef, just pedagogically. And so I want to spend more time. There'll be a Tosefta, there'll be a little Gemara, but most of the time we'll spend with the Beit Yosef and then with the Shulchan Aruch next week. So, but okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Joel. Thank you, Joel. Very interesting.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks to everybody.
So.
Laila Tov.